I do a lot of Zoom classes now, as you guys well know, and I have to say that the monthly meeting of making discoveries, it just is always just such a nice sense of hanging out with friends, more so than I'm giving a class. So thank you all for being here. And it's good to see you. I love to see that you're here with me month after month after month. I know that it's nice too, because we have a lot of people from out of state that join every month now too. People that weren't able to come into the city or come out to Plainview before I was doing this by Zoom. So it's nice that a lot of people will be delivered their video tomorrow as well, but they don't get to ask questions live. So first off, just remember to use the chat room tonight. And, oh, thank you, Terry. Oh, thank you, Susan. Yes, keep using that chat. Not for questions for your guides, but for compliments for me. Don't forget to use the chat room. Any questions that you have. This is the one opportunity that you're guaranteed. I do my very best. I answer almost all questions that come up in the chat room and questions that I was given in advance. So we'll get to all those. I'm gonna. Hello, how are you?
Yeah.
Yay! Good to see you. Okay, so I'm going to start out with a little theme. I was going to start out with a question, but I'll start out with a little theme. It's interesting over all the years, and it doesn't ever end, but I see themes appear with clients. And it's about how, like, over a week or 2 week period, someone says something and then another person says the same thing and then another and another and another. And that's what they're looking for some guidance with. And I find that so fascinating how consistently I get to see trends that are going on, like probably throughout the whole globe, just by the people that come through my client base and I do coaching with, that we have such a interesting cross-section of people that we get to see what's going on in the general population when different things pop up. It's one of the ways that I get to notice energy changes as well. Like, I'm not from a zodiac or astrological perspective, because I don't have the capability of doing that, but I definitely see and get information about different vibrations that are affecting us. And I can sense right now we're coming off a huge change vibration, a transitional vibration. And I know probably a lot of you who are online right now or are watching this had some kind of a major change in their lives or around them over about the last 3 weeks, I would say. And I sensed that it was coming in, and then it came in and landed here. And now I can sense that the biggest part of it is starting to kind of fade out again, which means that not that we're not going to have transitions and changes for the end of October or the beginning of November, but just that the vibration we're entering into is different than the vibration that we've had for the last few weeks. What was said for the last few weeks is, if you have some kind of change that you have been postponing and you needed a little extra courage or a little extra impetus, just get that change going now, because it's a good time for the universe to do its part and help carry you softly through that change. Okay? But something that was that has been popping up a lot is fuel. Where are we getting our fuel from? What is fueling us? And a lot of cases with clients, people are being asked to, by guides, like, what's feeding you? And I get why this is a topic that's coming up more and more, because there has been different shifts during this viral period where, from March and April, maybe a little bit scooting into May, there was a sense of resilience and creativity. People were coming up with ideas of how to live in physical separation from one another. They were being really creative in how to find happiness or play. They were being really creative in how to move from being together to move to virtual and school and connections and work and entertainment and all of this. So there was a ton of creative explosion going on, even all the way to how we saw a lot of people taking lyrics out to famous songs and recutting those songs with all like Corona words and everything in there. And some of it was really, really, really funny. But then the novelty of it and that kickstart that we get of vibration that we can keep having it pull us, even if things aren't where we want them to be, that started to get dull. And then luckily we were boosted by summer. Summertime tends to be an opportunity to be outside more. You didn't feel the impact of the social distancing as much because you could just be outside anytime and be hanging out with people and doing things. And August, I started to sense like a downturn in even the most optimistic people's optimism. I think it was sort of like just too much for too long. And also a sense that traditionally September, because we had all attended school for a certain number of years, September symbolizes for us change and new beginnings and learning and discovery and sometimes even mastery. So when we were children and we went and we got our new shiny shoes or a new notebook or a new lunchbox, the month of September was a significant moment for us because there was so much new. There were new kids in our classes. There was a new teacher. There was a new curriculum, a new style of how that classroom was managed. And in the older grades, moving from class to class and meeting more people or schools converging. But what we don't realize is how much we link that new beginning with a sense of the movement of the calendar. And for those of you who are watching in climates where we don't even have the 4 seasons, a lot of times we tend to think it's when we start to see the leaves change and so on. But that sense, it doesn't just come from the autumn or the fall of the leaves and the change of the colors or the cooler air. It comes from our connecting September with a moment of beginning, of kind of reimagining ourselves, because when you pick out your first day of school outfit and you put all those brand new clothes on the first day, no matter what happens from that day forward, you are starting something new. And pretty much everybody is experiencing it with you at the same time. And so oftentimes when we get that feeling in September, it's a time when we try something new. We might take a new class. We might go on a trip somewhere. We might just try to explore something. I happen to notice October and November for seminars for me, they're probably the busiest 2 months of the year. And it does come from that desire to re-educate ourselves, to expand, to explore, okay? So what happened in this year was September was the first time in the month of September that what I generally see in my client base was not consistent in the month of November. It actually flipped. So normally I see a big spike from September 15th to the 30th because everybody's gotten their families settled or they're settled with whatever this new school year may be. Or even, believe it or not, a lot of changes happen in corporations because they also oftentimes follow that September rhythm of newness when everybody's settled in from their summer vacations and taking time off. There's a sense of new beginning in September. But in this September, I had a spike from the beginning of September through the mid-September point. And then what I would normally see a little bit more of a lull. The lull came later. So the whole month flipped. And what I saw interwoven in that, the flip of the month, was that there was a little bit of a confusion. What are we supposed to do? You know, for a lot of people, it was, September 22nd and their kids weren't back in school physically, or they were home and online, or then they were back, or then they were supposed to go into the office and they were told not to come into the office, and then they were told they would get a promotion, but then they were not given a promotion because they ran out of money. Or it's just been like nothing has been predictable in the month of September. And I find that people have gotten weary. So the universe tried to give us some support by amping up that support energy at the end of last month, where the transition point was whatever you put into the waters of transition in that moment, you would be able to have yourself buoyed just by having the intention of a meaningful and positive transition. You were buoyed, and the universe was helping to guide you through all of that. Because, like I said, the September was uneasy for a lot of people because it didn't fulfill that normal rhythm that we don't even know that we expect or are used to. People are definitely getting weary, is what someone wrote in the comment. I just said shiny shoes today too. You did. That's so funny. I must have picked that up from you, or your guys are talking to you and me at the same time. I'm taking a sip of my dandelion tea. Okay. Now I have my sweater on. Now I'm too hot. Ugh, but I'm not going to take it off. So in this period of transition, one of the greatest things for us to think about is about power. When I started to understand the metaphor of our physical experience on Earth as what I always see it as now, because it really helps me to understand the vibration of our journey here, as I see it as in physical manifestation, the physical Earth is powered by our sun. Our sun is a star. So since this is what gives life to Earth, and there would be no life as we know it, plants, animals, and people, then this is really our power source, isn't it? The sun. So when we're not in physical, our power source is similar, something radiant, never-ending, beautiful, and light, which you might think of it as, if you like the idea of there being a creator or the universe itself. I know Ayn Rand in my first book, oops, handy eraser I got there. She refers to that term of that interconnectedness of all as all that is. So if we're taking our souls, and when we're in physical manifestation, we're projecting consciousness into the physical world, then in the physical world, the metaphor for the collective would be the sun. So as I became aware of being able to talk to guides and communicate with them, I recognized that I have always loved the sun. I'm not one who basks in the sun. I don't go to the beach and lay out on a blanket. I don't do anything of that because that just bores the hell out of me. But I do feel myself drawn to the sun. And if it rains too many days in a row, even if it's the middle of winter, when the sun comes back out, I go out there and will just stand there and feel it and just bask in the fact that it's there and it's bright and it's warm and it just feels so good. So I've always made a joke and said that I am solar powered, and not necessarily, like I said, being one who I don't, like to tan. I don't do that. I just don't enjoy it. Like I said, it bores me. So I'm not solar powered that I have to go get sun on my face in order to feel, alive. But I like to be outdoors when the sun is shining. It's important to me. I feel more vibrant. I feel more energetic. And I spend a great deal of time making sure that I can get outdoors when that sun is shining. So over the last 10 years, what I came to realize is the reason I feel solar powered is because it is connecting me with all that is. So the metaphoric equivalent of me feeling this way when I'm in the sun, it's the equivalent of us having our intuition or our spirituality remind us that we are all connected and remind us of our eternal journey. So this metaphor, me being solar powered, is me basically downloading guides, isn't it? Right? metaphorically, it's me taking the energy of all that is and our eternal light, our eternal journey, and bringing it into myself as a human being, which is probably one of the reasons why I personally feel like I follow the sun and I want to be with the sun. It was interesting, back when we used to be allowed to travel, you guys remember that, right? So when we used to be allowed to travel, I used to have business trips to Florida on a regular basis. And one of the things I found, especially in Miami, I don't know why, but in Miami, I always found that the air conditioning in Miami is like super, super high. Like they put it way higher, lower, right? Lower, makes it colder. So the air conditioning is super low in Miami, and maybe just everywhere I go. And in the Northeast, we don't make it that low. I don't know why, if we just adjust to the heat a little bit better, but they have it super low. So it got to the point where I was like packing like really warm sweaters and trying to find very creative ways to speak, because by the time I was done giving a presentation in Miami, my lips would be blue and my fingers would be like numb. And so sometimes I would like, even if I was in a corporation, I would like plan a 15-minute break. And then I'd take the exit door at the back of the stage and I'd run outside and I would just stand there in the sun for like 15 minutes and let the warmth get out of my numb fingers and let the purple get out of my lips. And then I would go back inside and feel like I could get through the next hour. My advice to you is, if I come and visit you ever, don't put the air conditioning too low. But it is kind of interesting to think what powers us, right? If we don't choose what we are getting as our power, we will be powered by something accidentally. And that's the theme that I've been seeing for the last couple of weeks. If you don't make a choice what you're powered by, you will be powered by something accidentally. Okay? So I want you to think for a minute. And it's tempting when we're together and you're kind of in that spiritual vibration. It's really tempting to think of the best possible answers. You know, I'm powered by creativity. I'm powered by exploring. I'm powered by my, by my children or happiness or whatever. But if you really want to be honest with yourself, it's also important to look at, do you get power by something that doesn't really feel positive? Because power, the energy that comes from it, it might not put you in necessarily a happy space, but the source of energy that you're taking in, the source of stimulation that you're taking in, it could be a negative source. Like one of the things that's very common, and I see this among clients all the time, is that they have unknowingly, I don't love the word addiction, so let's use the word habit, but it can be addictive. They can become, create a very strong habit of being powered by or energized by drama. And then as soon as there's no drama, there's no turmoil, and there's nothing to fret about or text people really quickly to tell a story and then bring some more of that back in later, they start to feel dull. And they begin to equate a lack of drama with boredom. So unknowingly, they draw in more drama because it gives them a sense of a pulse, right? So imagine if, I obviously don't care about my phone because I don't even know where it is. I wanted to use it as a prop. Well, I'm not going to use it as a prop because I don't have it. So let's pretend that this is my phone. Okay, so now imagine like she said such and such, and all of a sudden I hear this and I'm like, oh my God. So I quickly pick up my phone and I text someone, do you know what she just said, right? And then I put something on Insta and then I'm scrolling to see like what other people are saying. Do you feel that sense of drama that comes in when you're doing this? You're not even processing anything, but you're immediately taking action. Immediately looking or scrolling, immediately putting something out there or making a statement or seeing what other people are saying or doing or looking. So we don't realize necessarily that we can be energized by things that are making us busy and making us have a pulse, but not necessarily coming from a positive source, but coming from something that can be negative and it can be addictive. So tonight what we really want to do is say, how can I be mindful of powering myself in a way that's actually going to advance my power, so that my power source is actually empowering, which that's the word we want to produce from whatever source of power we are receiving. I am actually hot. I am going to take this off. So, okay. So anyway, you didn't hear anything I just said, right? And I narrated it all. I think I just said one of the most important sentences ever said on the planet since the birth of humankind. And you guys missed it because I didn't have my headset on. So if it comes back to me, I'll tell it to you again, but now I forgot it. So we'll just do this anyway. Okay. So we want our source of energy to empower us. Okay. One of the consequences of the family I was raised in is that we had this thing. I mean, there were a lot of tough challenges. So this one wasn't really a tough challenge, but it was just sort of like a little theme that kind of ran through childhood. But we had this almost like a contest of who had things the worst. So somebody would come in and say, "Oh, I can't believe it. Some flipping guy hit the bumper of my car," right? And we'd be like, "Oh, that's horrible. But did you know that when I was driving down the road, I hit a skunk and the oil of the skunk got into my brand new tire?" And then somebody else would come in and say, "Well, you think that's bad. I had a guy skiing down the mountain and he knocked into my bumper and he pulled the bumper off the car." And so then the next person would come in and they'd kind of top that story. And the story toppings were never positive. It was like, who had things the worst? Who was the worst off? And so when I became an adult, I actually started to take a look at that. We would, somebody would call somebody and say, "Oh, this happened." And then you'd feel like depleted because that person got all the attention then. Whoever was the most down and out got the most attention. So what it did was it put me on a path of really needing to top somebody by having more drama, by having more negative episodes and experiences. And if you have no idea whatsoever that this is going on in your home, it becomes a way of being that you become this huge magnetic energy for drama. And by getting fueled by things that are constantly chaotic and tumultuous. So it might sound very easy to say, what is my power source? What am I allowing myself to be powered by? But it's not about just the energy behind it where you feel like you have a pulse and you're alive and people are witnessing you or you're getting attention. But what empowers you to be and live in the best vibration that you want to be and live in. But there was a little thing I saw here before that I wanted to answer in the chat room. Can we be powered by the virus? Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, you can actually be powered by the virus. For some people, they are experiencing what I was talking about, that the fuel is coming from a sense of fear, or it's a sense of needing a ton of information, or it's fueled by maybe having an overblown reaction to this or that, or any dramatic aspect of it. But it could also be motivating to become more aware, to have more downtime, to clear your head more, to do something where you're advancing yourself instead of taking the extra time where you might have been hustling and bustling, but to do something that feels creative. So yes, we can be powered by, we can have the virus period a source of our energy as well. What are we going to do with that? Are we going to convert it into something negative that pulls us down, or are we going to turn it into something positive that lifts us? But that was a good question. Okay, so I'm going to ask people when I'm looking at you. There's only a few of us up here. We could. Most people are, I think, are still getting the video tonight. But raise your hand if you'd like to say what powers you, and then you can unmute yourself and share with us what powers you. Does anybody have something that powers them? I will go with Sherry.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
So what powers me up is doing stuff like this, meditation, yoga, journaling. That's really where I feel the most plugged in.
Okay.
And so that I can be in the world in the way that I like to be in the world and not feel like drained or spent or.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's an awesome example. Do you concentrate on making that a pretty regular part of your weekly experience?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I meditate every day. I do some writing. I teach a lot of yoga on Zoom. So, yeah, I mean, it's the stuff like this that for me, like joining you here and, I've been on Zoom a lot, and just because I find these times so chaotic that all those things that I mentioned brings me a sense of calm or more of a peaceful feeling in my life.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that I'm sure you recognize then is that if you ever find that you have a little bit of a lull, then whatever you're doing as your source of power on a regular basis, think of it as maintenance. It's always a good idea during a dip or during a lull is to amp it up. And you put a little bit more of that into your week, and it'll help you to ride out that period of when you might have had a dip. Okay?
Mm-hmm. But, I had typed in before that I find like a lot of people are getting very weary with this virus.
That was my point.
And,
you made it more easily than I did.
Right. And with this whole political climate and just hearing like a lot of crazy things now, what could happen post-election.
Right.
In terms of the violence and, my daughter's company is going to shut down from election. They just opened and took some employees back, but they're going to shut down from election day for a month in New York City, expecting like all this violence and mayhem in New York City, So it's like, yeah, we have to do things like this. So we just don't.
You don't slip into that
abyss
that black
of fear.
hole. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good point. Thank you. Terry, I see that you wrote in bringing joy to others. I like that. And knowing you, I happen to know that that's very true, that is your power source. Anybody else want to share? It's kind of nice to hear different ideas. All right, Debbie?
Pretty much what Shelby said. I meditate every day, but also exercise. Whether I take a brisk walk in the morning or just do my exercise or Pilates, it gives me that energy and it makes me feel good for the day. And what really powers me up are my grandchildren. When I'm around them, it's like it lights me like the sun lights you. That's my powering up.
Yeah.
And they're fun.
Yeah. I totally hear that. And even beyond what she says, the words about what Debbie does to grab that positive energy, there's actually a lot of physiological evidence and proof behind what we do get by playing with children and what we do get by exercise. you know, for me personally, and I've mentioned this before, if I went 3 days without exercise, I would actually lose some mental clarity. Then I would start to feel I don't know. I feel doughy. I'm not talking about the tightness of my body. I just feel like a lump if I go into a third day without exercise. I don't feel vibrant. I don't feel alive. I don't feel elated, right? So of course, when we find what is the optimal exercise schedule for us, whatever that might be, that's as important to keep as a habit to help us get our source of power and have it effectively empower us. That's something that you don't want to let go of. You can't really take a break from it. It's important as I was explaining it is for me to run out into the sun for 15 minutes when I'm in the middle of making a speech in Miami. Okay. But it's a fuel. It's an essential fuel. It really is an essential fuel. When I'm doing groups and I'm reading people, one of the things that pops up once in a while is I might do a whole 2 hours. Maybe Anna might have been there for one of these, but I might even do a whole 2 hours going around and reading something about what might be the bare minimum necessary for your relationship with your body as far as exercise. So intuitively I'll get, well, it's a matter of this, maybe a little bit of tennis, a little bit of swimming, a little bit of that. Next person, I'll get this. It'll be an entirely different program. Next person, I'll get that. It'll be an entirely different program. But just from an intuitive perspective, guides can tell me what your bare minimum necessary is. And when I say bare minimum necessary, it's important to understand that we use the word necessary because it is, you can't see that, can you? There. Bare minimum necessary. We use the word necessary only because in order to stay even as being a conduit that can be empowered by our other energy sources, we have to create the vessel in which that empowerment can occur. Okay? It was funny. I think I was in Connecticut doing a private party, and we were going around and I was doing the bare minimum necessary for everyone with their relationship with their body. And I got to this one woman and I read her, and the guides gave me that the bare minimum necessary for her was 2 hours of exercise 5 times a week. And I'm sitting there, and the last thing I want to do is tell her this, right? Like, that seems like a really horrible thing to say to somebody, because would that deflate me if someone told me that? And so I didn't have any choice because I had learned that I'm a conduit. I'm not a decider here. So I told her, and it was really funny because she's like, oh, come on, I know that. You're not telling me anything I don't know. I really certainly feel better if I'm working out 4 hours a day instead of only 2. So it's interesting how when you do get into a level where you recognize what kind of movement makes you feel best, and when you're not amping up at least that minimum amount of movement, then doing the rest that powers you and makes you feel empowered becomes almost impossible to do. It really does. Okay? Oh, Karen Garvey, wisdom empowers you. Thank you. Making people laugh. I know that that's very, very true for you. Connecting with people and new experiences. I love that. You're still finding ways to do it, huh, Diane? Let me see if I can see your face. Yes? All right, cool. You're still finding ways to do it. We have a Diana on too, but I don't see her. So I'm glad I picked the right person, Diane. Okay. I just found out, Diane, other clients that are going to be there the November weekend. So I'll introduce you. Okay. All right. So now, what anybody else want to share? I'll look at everybody's face. Okay. Monica. Oops, you unmuted yourself before I did. Okay, gotcha.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things. I love exercise, but one thing I've done during COVID is walking, which brought me back to college where I walked a ton. And
Oh,
it
interesting.
made me feel really good. It's kind of invisible exercise for me. And I love listening to music. Music always really helps lift my spirits. So walking outdoors, listening to music has been really wonderful. I think the thing that kind of empowers my life is spiritual progress and interest in moving ahead in that area. And I found the last 2 years or whatever, I really feel like I've embodied or gotten some concepts down to where I can kind of live with them instead of just study them, but I can kind of be in them or notice them working in my life, which is actually kind of funny.
Yeah. Before they are theoretical and now they can actually be
like I'm like, wow, I really did that, so
yeah. I think those are amazing power sources. It's interesting how I think a lot of us are experiencing the same sources of power, and we're here together because we are drawn to some of these same energies, these same vibrations. Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to make sure. All right. All right. So what I realized as I was communicating with some people and recognizing that sometimes what they were eating was making them feel crummy. I'm not talking about food, but what they were eating in their conversations and their focus with others was certainly making them feel drained and depleted and weary. It's very hard to think that you have to be kind of smacked around with, the political environment or I don't know how we can have a debate about a virus, but viral debate, if you will, that you could keep getting knocked around and slapped back and forth from opinions and think that you're going to come through this with a sense of peace and calm and optimism about your future and a sense of purpose and a sense of promise that you're living your best days, you're living your best life, you feel really happy and proud of who you are. When you're doing that and you're bouncing back between all this, whether you're feeling in a defensive or an offensive position, or you're just sharing information, and again, you're doing the top me game that I was told you we had when I was a child, it's not going to bring you to a place where you feel empowered. You can't be in that kind of dialogue and leave empowered, okay? Unless you're invited in because someone has a sense that you have a suggestion of value to them and they're asking you to share it. Most people really don't want your opinion. And especially if it has anything to do remotely with politics or suggestions of how they might live a better life. If they haven't invited you in with a specific question or specific curiosity, they really don't care what you have to say. So it's two people that become defensive having a conversation where no one's meeting in the middle if you haven't been invited in. Like Sherry was saying how she's been teaching yoga online. Sherry's not doing cold calls to people saying, listen, I'm doing a Zoom yoga class online in 30 minutes. You got to get your ass on there because you're a hot mess and you need some peace in your life. So get online and I want to see your face. What she does is she goes on Zoom and she offers the class and people sign up and they sign in. So she puts the invitation out there, and then the people who are welcoming that type of information or that suggestion, they're there and they're able to take it because you invited them and you have something of value that you can offer, and then you offer it. The same is true with most of us, as I see who's here. Even Terry, I know, Terry, you don't knock on anyone's door saying I have the most wonderful opportunity for you to work with companion dogs or to help people in schools, to help people with anxiety or with whatever else. There's an invitation. People know that you have the dogs and they invite you, and you've invited them to share the experience or even help them train their own dogs. But it's a two-way street. It's an invitation. I could go through an example of most of you here. Getting back to you, Monica, you're with your artwork. You're not standing out in front of your street, tripping people. And then when they need some ice to put on the bump, you bring them in and show them your artwork, you know, hey, while you're here, here's some ice. And also look at this. What do you think? You know, it's available for purchase in a couple of different mediums. No, it's not how it works. We can't compel anybody to come into those moments of opportunity. Yes, people search for you, Terry. It's exactly right. So we can invite people to find sources of power that might be more liberating for them and might bring them to places that help them to feel more in charge of themselves or more like themselves or more passionate or excited or free about any aspect of their journey or their life. But we certainly can't compel them to do that. The last part that I want to say about this, about what are we powered by. So in this last couple of weeks when I was listening to the suggestions that guides were making about where is your fuel coming from, one of the things that popped up, I thought it was a really kind of simple and sweet tool, and I'm sure we'll eventually grow it into something bigger as a source for us. But you know how on the bottom of a little website, if it's a free website or it's discounted, it says like powered by whatever, right? And then it says the little advertisement in there. So what was kept popping up in my head from guides, and I didn't even say it, maybe I said it to like one client, but I was getting it narrated at me like a week or two. They kept saying, they kept saying to me, powered by joy. And I thought, I love that. That is such a great expression, powered by joy. If you thought about yourself as whoever you are, your selected identity, you know, you got rid of some of the stuff from childhood that you didn't want, and you brought in more of who you really are. But in some form, you're who you want to be at this point in your life to a large degree. And so you're kind of like a website, like a personal brand. You are a brand. You are your own brand. So if you're a website and you are the brand, you know, no one else is Monica, no one else is Debbie, no one else is Sue, no one else is Diane, and so on. If you had that little tagline in the bottom, wouldn't it be cool if that tagline just said, hi, my name is Debbie Tucciello and I am powered by joy. Like if we all just live like that every day, see that our sponsor, our personal sponsor is joy. And every day you are sponsored by joy. So all of the things that we've talked about tonight, making people happy or connecting with people or Pilates or I don't even remember some of them now, but these things that we're talking about, when we're all listing the thing that empowers us, the thing that is our fuel, they all give us such a sense of joy. They're fulfilling because they're joyful. And if we think in terms of what brings me joy, if I allow myself to be powered by joy, then I will always perpetually be able to ride the ups and downs of whatever the rest of humanity is going through, because I will stay in that space that I am powered by joy. I was thinking about this yesterday. We always tend to, a little chilly again. Let's see if we can see if we can compromise where I maybe get half a sweater or something. I don't know. But no, it has nothing to do with my age. So all right. So yesterday, we tend to have a full house on Sundays. A lot of people just stop by and watch football and all that. And I like having people around, and I like that kind of, feeling and all, but I certainly can't sit through like a a 2-hour football game, but I'll pop in a lot and I'll check up on how the teams, that the people I love, how they're doing. And so it's still a fun day for me, even though it's not, how I spend all my time. So, but what I did instead was, there was a pile of bushes outside that had been ripped out like 2 months ago. And I was waiting for them to kind of flatten down a little bit and have all the little needles fall off. You know how scratchy they can be if you pull out a bush. So those have been sitting there for 2 months. And I was like, I just feel like moving my body. And I do this a lot. I felt like moving my body. So I powered up my Sawzall and I put the wood blade on my Sawzall and I headed outside and I started to, little by little, just started chopping up those bushes. And I made a pile of logs and I made a pile of sticks and kindling. And so I have a fire pit out in the back. So, because the bushes had been sitting out massive. I mean, it's the size of a small house, like I said. So massive amounts. And little by little, I just kind of plugged along. And by the time I was out there for a while, by the time I was kind of done, I had burned up 6 wheelbarrows full of just sticks and logs. And I put a good sized dent in that pile of bushes. Now, is there an easier way to do this? I could have called somebody and said, get these bushes out of here, take them away. It would have been done in about 14 minutes, right? It was going to take me a month. And yeah, I had such a great time. There was such joy in it. There was joy in the process for me. There was a joy in my achievement. There was a joy in being able to do anything that I want to do, that no one can tell me that there's a job that's too big for me. There's a joy in being outdoors. There's a joy in being playing where there's birds and there's squirrels and there's rabbits, and I'm just out there hanging out with them, and some of them are hopping around me fairly close. They don't even mind the sound of my power saw because they're so used to me being outside with them. They're like, she's nuts, but just don't get annoyed by her noise, okay? Just hang out and she's okay. She'll feed you. Trust me, she'll feed you. So I realized that I am powered by joy. A lot of people might have seen that as a massive chore, or they might have come in the house and saw some big, strong men, drinking some hard seltzer on the sofa watching football, and that might have been a source of irritation. For me, it's not. For me, it's I'm so glad that they're there and they're enjoying each other, and I'm so glad that I can do exactly what I want, but not miss in the camaraderie of having the people over my house or force myself to sit there and watch football, which I just don't enjoy doing. So I am powered by joy. And time again, I make choices that just feel like I want to do this. I just want to do this for no other reason. You're not going to find a picture on Instagram of what the pile size was before I began compared to the size of it now, because I did it for me. I didn't do it to share. Here I am sharing. What was the saying? It comes from a movie or something. You're a liar because you tell lies. So but anyway, you know what I'm saying though, right? Whatever it is, you open up the refrigerator and you're like, oh, look at this. I have some fresh mozzarella. I had some fresh breadcrumbs, or I have some herbs in my garden. I'm going to pick some of that and I'm going to just make something. Oh, I don't have any eggplant. So let's see what would happen if I made this out of zucchini. That's so joyful if that makes you happy. No matter how many hours it takes or how it turns out, it's the joy in getting excited about something, to do something, to create something. And it doesn't have to have any kind of result. There is no one that is going to come to my house at any moment and say, you know what, great job. We saw the size of that pile of bushes and we thought you were like the poor trash family in the neighborhood. And we were just dying to see what you were going to do to get rid of that. And we are so appreciative that you finally cut the thing up and got rid of it. No one's going to come. No one's going to say, good job. But the joy that I feel is all that really matters. And that's the day-to-day life of my experience. Is this little guy girl. She was born under our deck. There were 6 of her at the time. Say hello. Did you hear her meowing? So she was born under our deck, and now she lives everywhere. See, I told you, you're an animal near my house when we feed you. So now when you think of that, oh, I want to read this. This looks like, oh, thank you. She's a real cutie. Go say hello, Andy. She has a boy name, but come say hello, Andy. Jump up. There you go. Oh, can you see her? Oh, she's right on my desk. Can you see her? There she is. See her? It's so if you think about whatever. Oh, I wanted to read. That's what I was going to do, but she blocked the computer for me. So, put the sweater on your back with your arms in the front. Oh, that's a good idea. All right, that's a good idea. That's what I'll do. I'll put the sweater on I'm going to look like 1980s, right? The whole pastel Miami Vice vibe. I guess this night is all about Miami, because isn't that what they always did? They kind of put this over their pastel sweaters, right? And then they, there we go. That's a good idea. That'll do the trick. Okay, now it'll be neither hot nor cold. It'll be just perfect. Okay, that was a good, oh, you can see that was a private message, so no one saw that message except me. Now they think I'm making stuff up, but I'm not. I heard today, this is what I wanted to read. This looked really cool. I heard today, to feel joy is holding space for all emotions, happiness, grief, depression, and courage. That's really interesting. Holding space and not being fear-based, that you have to shove other emotions aside, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to fill up with the emotions that don't make you feel positive, but it certainly does make space for the positive emotions as well. Just like I was saying, how I didn't realize that as a child and a young adult, I only made space for chaos so I could top the person who was worst off in the family, right? So it wasn't joy to make space for only that. So I expanded into allowing positive emotions to be in my life. And I made a point of teaching myself as an adult. I taught myself how to play as an adult, something that I really did not know how to do. Let's see if there's any other messages here. So cute. So she says she doesn't really come up here usually when I'm on Zoom. So that was a nice treat. She must like everybody here. And okay, so what I want you to think of then for tomorrow and every day after is when you wake up, think of yourself as you are your own brand. And when you walk into the space of just being alive, even if you don't see anyone or speak to anyone, but just be present in yourself and your own being, see yourself as powered by joy. And if you think of it in those 3 words connecting to each other, powered by joy, what it does is it motivates you to say, what does give me joy? What does make me happy? What does motivate me? And it's interesting because when you know you are powered by joy, you start to recognize that the happy moments are not limited to the times when you recreate. The happy moments are all times, even if you're doing something that feels like it's on your to-do list, or you're at work, or you're doing something that feels as though it's a chore. You can still find those joyful moments in all of it by knowing just that sense of I am powered by joy. Okay. I don't know why I'm like thinking myself how some of the things that how I changed after I peeled off the masks and layers of childhood, but there was an actual real change in going to the grocery store for me. And I'm thinking back on it. I don't think I ever realized it, the changes that happened. But instead of going to the grocery store to shop and to fill the refrigerator and then to cook and all of this, I would like get very, very excited if there was a new fruit in the produce section that I was unfamiliar with. I would try to find someone that could tell me what that was or how to prepare it or how to eat it. And I would find stuff like that because to me, it actually brought me joy. So I would forget about whatever was on the grocery list. I would see this thing and I would get very, very excited about it. And then as I was growing my kids, if they went to the grocery store with me, we would actually go and seek out foods we had never tried in the produce section. And we would always come home. It might just be one of everything. And some of them were a total bust because maybe we really didn't know how to cook them. But we have pretty much tried every single thing in the produce department, things that we couldn't even pronounce. And we would come back home and we'd look them up and try to see how to cook it or how to eat it or how to do something with it. But there was like so much joy in it. So as far as I can tell, my kids don't feel like dragged down by the process of like feeding themselves or going to the grocery store because there was joy in it, right? Why shouldn't there be joy in it? There's really nothing is a chore unless you decide that it's going to be something negative. It really doesn't have to be. Okay. All right, cool. Sometimes I will take a break at 8 o'clock, but I think we have a nice group here tonight online. Does anybody have any questions that they want me to ask their guides tonight? I know I had a couple that were emailed to me. So will you write your questions in the chat room for a second? Because I do have to go pull up my email in order to read them, and then I'll come back and answer them, okay? In the meantime, you guys write your questions down for me, and I will be right back. Okay, first question was sent to me today by someone that's actually live. The rest are from people that aren't online right now. So since there's only one person that emailed me a question who's on right now, would you like to just nod so I won't embarrass you? If you would like, nod that you would like to just say your question out loud.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I had a feeling you'd be okay with that rather than me read it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I'm an artist. So I had kind of had, in the last month, I've had major inspiration about doing art connected with cycling, like bicycling. I have a new boyfriend that's a cyclist, and I was doing something for him. And so I've been very inspired about just a ton of ideas. So I'm putting together a piece, and I just wondered if there was any suggestions on that. I have a ton of ideas. I'm inputting a few things and just trying to organize it. My head's kind of spinning with a lot of stuff. So I just wondered if there was any, and Karen, you and I had discussed this before in another session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or just
absolutely.
The idea of that path. So I'm going down that path. I feel really good about it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering if there's anything that came up.
I did get something that popped in tonight, which surprised me. But I also want to say, Monica, that there's someone that's registered tonight and she's not on live. I think there's very few people on live tonight, but she is registered and she happens to work in Long Island's largest bicycling supply store and bike store. So I do think it's funny that she'll be watching this video tomorrow and that you're kind of indirectly having a conversation with her, which I think is pretty comical. But what did pop up today, and of course you may have thought it already, but one thing is to have a legend in the artwork and have the legend be about things that come directly from them. So it's so funny that we're talking about like what fuels you, right? So it could be, stopped off to give my son a kiss, and the legend could be a yellow dotted line, or here's when the people that love me supported me on the ride, and a different color dot, or here's when, whatever it is, but add a legend into a corner of the artwork of something that really expresses them directly in their whole journey in that path. Okay. And that'd be a
Okay.
fun way to see different parts of we all see the journey itself of the bike ride and where they went and how much they accomplished and how many miles it is. But it's kind of fun to put a little bit more of their personality in there with the legend. It can be assigned to anything at all. Even something funny, like here are the locations where I picked up my protein bars, and you have like 65 of those spots. It could even be kind of funny if it represents their personality.
Oh yeah, I have tons of that stuff. Like that's going to make it more than just a map. I mean, anyone can do a map. So
yes.
Bible verses are a big deal to him. Tons of funny things that happened along the way. And he's done three separate rides for this whole training thing. Yeah. So
So what all they're doing then is you already had the good idea. All they're doing then is putting it into legend form. You know how like we always see this is 5 miles and this is 10 miles. It's a little bit like being able to, it just helps people with more of the visual where they're looking down. Oh, let's look at the yellow dot. And you look at the yellow dot and you see the yellow dot, how it interwove in the map,
Right.
That kind of thing.
And like a wheel of insights, because when you do distance cycling, you're by yourself so much. I mean, it's quiet by yourself. So
talk about needing a power source, right?
Yeah. So the insights that come to him, spiritual insights or just insights like, oh my God, I'm getting a different bike next year, or, just different things like that would be fun to kind of remember. Because they're personal commission pieces for the individual person, like what's important to them, why they're doing it, all that kind of thing. So
I totally agree. And when we have talked about it, I think it's an absolutely phenomenal idea. There's so much stuff out there and people are always looking to buy something for a special occasion. I don't think there's anything better than to celebrate one of the most meaningful experiences a person has in their life than a piece of artwork like that, Monica. I totally 100% agree with you. Absolutely.
Right.
Very cool.
Plugging ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Biking ahead.
Oh my God. Well, he bought me a bike this weekend.
I read that in your email.
I'm going to do tire tracks as the mat, like from the actual bike. We did that this weekend. He wanted his actual tire tracks. So I learned how to do that.
So cool.
So it's all just a huge process, like a learning process of figuring out how to represent these things. But yeah.
I think that's very, very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. So I have someone in the chat room now who's asking, how long is this virus going to take? Okay. So interestingly, we've had, I've always talked about the moment of where the period of accelerated enlightenment is the most visible or tangible, that you can't unsee it once you know it. That's really been from like 2012 on. Doesn't mean it started in 2012. It certainly started before that. But when it's so obvious, has been from 2012 on. And during that period, there have been a lot of, sparks of major crises or catastrophes on the planet. And they're not thematic. They haven't been a duplication of one after the other, year after the other. The variety of them, from nature to violence to crime to all of this stuff, it's been such an extraordinary amalgamation of any kind of possible difficult experience that humanity could have. The whole idea behind this is that in the period of accelerated enlightenment, there's a quickening of the universe knocking on people's doors, trying to give them permission to awaken or shift, to walk through a door where they can't walk back through that door and unknow something that they now know. But we well know many people, the majority of humans, will live and die without knowing how to open up the door of opportunity and let in the valuable moment of discovery, or to take in that aha moment, let alone integrate it. But the universe and your guides are never going to stop trying, even if they're not successful in getting you to open the door now or now or now or now. So with all of these myriad mini explosions all around the globe since 2012, and certainly before that, but I'm just trying to give a time frame where the variety of it is so apparent. Even with that, we haven't been able to connect. We haven't been able to see that when we go and we go off the shores of this country, or we send money to this country, or we run down and help down the street, or we go to a wake and, do a food chain for a dinner chain for a family, we haven't been able to note on a larger scale that these opportunities for connection that seem fleeting are really there to awaken us to the fact that we are all connected and that we are one. We are one consciousness. What winds up happening is that most people sort through their reactions to whatever they hear about in the news, and they either see it as my problem or their problem or no one's problem. So they could be completely oblivious or invisible to it, or they'll just see it like, oh, that's happening over there. It has nothing to do with me. Or they'll see it as a problem, and it's a big problem. It's not my problem. But even if it's not my problem, I might be compassionate and toss something that way, like maybe some money. But there hasn't been anything that's unified the globe, no matter how massive some of the unifying moments have been. As long as people are seeing this as nobody's problem, your problem, or my problem, as long as no one is seeing this as our circumstance, then they're not unifying. And the purpose of the virus is to do exactly that. It's to give the entire planet pause. And unless you live so disconnected that there are no inter-village communications, and there's no newspapers, no telephone, no form of electronics whatsoever, unless you're in a really isolated place like that, where you probably have figured out the interconnectedness of us all anyway, because you haven't been bombarded with all of our misinformation. But unless you're in that kind of area, you are having some experience because of the virus. That's unifying. Let's say there's 7 billion people on the planet. That's got to be unifying at least 7.8 billion people. That's pretty darn amazing, isn't it? That there's only one thing that could bring us all together in the same conversation. So the universe tried these little pieces, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a big bit of this, a bigger bit of that, a big piece of this, and tried and tried and tried to get us to have a collective conversation. Yes, whomever was in the firestorm for any of those incidents, there was a more direct, personal, and intimate opportunity for discovery for those people or those players. But beyond that immediacy, there was an opportunity for discovery all the way across the globe for others to let go of the separation that ego brings us, to let go of that illusion. Now, with the virus is, even though we have this opportunity for interconnectedness and to see what's similar from us to someone on the opposite side of the globe, or from us to someone from a different religion or skin color or ethnicity or sexual preference or sexual self-identification or our political party, even though we have the opportunity to see, we all have this one thing in common. What happened was, as the politics started to get involved right from the beginning, they took something that could be incredibly unifying, and they even made that a set of camps open for debate where one is right and one is wrong. So the power of the positive possibility that was entwined with the virus landing on the planet back in March, the stretch out is because humanity is stretching it out. Ultimately, what the universe is seeking is for there to be a massive wave of enlightenment where people get a softening of knowing that it is not me against you, it is not us against them, but it is all of us. When people wake up in the morning and they go in the bathroom and they brush their teeth and they look in that mirror, they will look through those eyes every second of their life. Every experience that they have will be looking at that person in the mirror. They don't know what it's like to be different. They don't know what it's like to speak your language. They don't know what it's like to have your daily experiences morning, noon, and night. They have no idea what it's like to be you. Yet there's more the same about us than there is different. But as long as we're seeing things through the lens of our own perception, then the virus is going to continue to give us the opportunity to at least imagine what it might be like to be someone other than you. And not just someone other than you with a slightly wider circle that you're willing to wrap your head around, but you meaning the whole entire planet. Okay? One thing that I am certain about is that in the degrees of separation between one person and another, the energy that I have in my body, when I touch someone or I talk to them, they take that energy with them. If I even have an opportunity to be in front of them on social media for a second, they're still taking my energy. If they should read a book of mine, then they're taking my energy. So my energy, and I'm only talking about me in the middle of this because I'm talking about me in the middle of this, but everybody has the same opportunity. Wherever those touch points start, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter where you met me. Like I said, I'm only talking about this as me because I'm the one I see when I wake up and I look in the mirror in the morning. But from that touch point on, it's going to reach another touch point and the energy might get a little bit less strong, but eventually that energy is going to go all the way around the globe and somehow, some way, it's going to land in my back pocket. Energy does not stop. There are no borders. There are no oceans. There is no even need for energy to travel physically around an entire globe, because if there was a need for energy to travel around the globe from one person to reach another like that, we wouldn't be able to have shared consciousness from someone in California and New York or New York and Sweden. And there certainly wouldn't be the opportunity for us to connect with souls that don't have bodies anymore. So even though I'm literally pointing this out as a literal depiction of the vibration and how we're all connected, truth is, it doesn't take that long for the energy that you put out there and the way it affects somebody on the other side of the globe to come back and affect you again. That's what interconnected means. And that's what the virus is trying to help us find a way to understand. When my first two kids were little, I found this. I didn't even do that right, did I? Well, I found this. I think we were in, trying to think where we were. I know we were in a museum, and it might have, I don't remember what museum it was. I can't remember. But in the bookstore, I mean, in the gift shop, I always used to try to go into the kids section and try to find something that was like meaningful for the kids that day from whatever museum we were in. And they had this, it was like a sticker book, I guess. It wasn't a coloring book. It was a sticker book. And they had little children around the world. And then you had to go into the middle section where you had the pull-out, bright colored outfits. And then you had to take off all the little kids' costumes and then put it throughout all the pages of this is what the traditional dress would be like in this country or this country or this country. And on the front of the book, it was called something like Children Around the World. And it had a picture of children from everywhere and all the ways that they looked, you know, holding hands around the globe. And I loved that book. And I think it was because I don't think children had an ability to see any difference from this child to this child. So when my first kids got this book, they just saw it as, you know, this is the kids all around the world. They didn't see it as like, oh, this, you know, this little white person in New York is superior to the rest of the little children around the world. They didn't even have an ability to think that, let alone experience it. Their vibration was just to consider that not everybody dressed like this and not everybody looked like this, and therefore not everybody's experiences are like our experiences. And that book, to me, is what the virus is delivering. The virus is delivering to us one more opportunity to celebrate everybody instead of decide that some people are more worthy or more important or more special or more meaningful or anything like that. But to celebrate that we are all incredibly different, but we all have our own cool thing. And the virus helped us to show sparks of how we might have a play in the bigger picture of what the virus might mean, and see that, you know, if you're a fan of the idea of the vaccine, then we'll continue with the metaphor of it. But like, suppose it's not one of these big worshipped countries that's the one that comes up with the vaccine. I think it would be kind of cool if some obscure little country is the one that comes up with a vaccine, so that those who are into the celebration of a vaccine as the way out of this, that they could then see more that we're all connected. It wasn't about a competition between China and the United States. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about fighting. It wasn't about blame. It was about someone had a brilliant mind and they were supported enough in an organization and they got it done, and they got it done before everybody. That would be a cool way for this to wrap itself up a little bit faster. Okay. We might, I don't see it happening, that unifying moment will come about, that we'll all set our alarms and stand across the globe holding hands at exactly the same second, regardless of what hour it is in China or New York. I don't see that moment happening. But what we do know has already happened is that this has given an opportunity for a lot of people to change their perceptions of what their priorities are. So a lot of people have dumped things that no longer matter to them. And by choice, as we get more and more connected to people physically and to opportunities, they will be more judicious. At least a good percentage of people will be more judicious about what they let back into their lives that they have no longer participated in. We can go on forever about talking about that reprioritization and show example after example. I think one of the easiest examples is that with all of the people that I coach in all sorts of lines of work, I have yet to find one person who in the workspace, the full company has returned to full physical work environment. And so one of the beauties of this is that before the virus, I used to coach people in how to be able to work from home 1 day a week or 2 days a week. I've been coaching people in that for years, and I've been trying to help people be trendsetters, or help them let their bosses know that the world is not the way it used to be in the 1950s. If a woman goes home from work, there's not some woman sitting there serving martinis and dinner in a pair of heels saying, "Thanks, my love, for earning the money, and your children are tubbed and scrubbed, and here's your martini." We don't live in that world anymore. So it's the companies, for the large part, there are some really advanced ones, but for the most part, they're archaic. They expect that the way we operated in business in the 1950s is the way we're going to operate today. It's unrealistic. It's lacking in imagination. Who was the person on this planet that said that work is 9 to 5 and then you go home? And then who's the idiot that tacked on another 6 hours at the end of every day and say work is pretty much 9 to 11 as long as you have email access and a cell phone? So what this has done is it has really helped a lot of people to be able to have the courageous conversation with their employers about returning to the traditional 9 to whatever work week, and sitting in traffic and doing the commute and having that expectation that that's what we have to do to be successful or to be effective. So that's just one tiny example of the reprioritization and the possibility that we're going to have to amp up moving into the 20th century, even though so many people are resistant and want to just do things the way that they were. I think, it's so funny. One of the things that I've always had a hard time with the concept that in fraternities, the basis behind hazing, the whole entire basis of it is it was done to me, so you have to do it too. To me, that's such limited. I'm not even going to say childish thinking, because children think far better than that. It's just such limited thinking. But in a lot of ways, that's how we live life. I went through it, so you have to go through it too. But that's not the truth. We can, with our imaginations, reinvent things that are not working. So this virus is giving us a phenomenal opportunity to reimagine the things that are not working. And for that, I'm very grateful. I think I went on a long time about that question. So let's go to the next question. Oh, that's a good one. That was a private one. Okay, I do have a kind of private message. I'm going to address it, but I'll just keep it private. It's about a broken connection with a long-term family member where the communications kind of got cut off, and it's heartbreaking to have a misunderstanding erode a beautiful connection. So how do you kind of navigate that? I recognize so much how a misunderstanding can erode a relationship. The thing about it is that we can't supplant our experiences onto someone else. We can only live within and choose within our experience. So that means anyone else's version of something where, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want an explanation. I don't want to have a place where we're having a meeting of the minds or we get to share our opinions. If another person is coming from that camp and they're not coming from the place where you're feeling brokenhearted, but they're, running away or letting it be and not inviting you in for, some kind of rediscovery, that means that in this moment in their life, this sense of isolation or the sense of indifference or whatever it is that they're demonstrating is exactly the potential opportunity for them to open up a door. Because sometimes it's not in the heat of a moment, even if it's an extended moment, that we get to experience our aha moment. It might be something where we don't get the aha moment for years, but the seed of the potential is within us now. I'm going to give you a little tiny example. So when I was in and I think this can help to illustrate it, and I hope that certainly it happens sooner, but I just want to point out a little example. When I was in my 20s, I worked in the defense industry, and I was one of the very few females, and I was the only one ever that was under 30. I never met anybody. And I made my way, and I think I did a good job in it. But I also had a lot of responsibility. And one of my counterpoints, it was a Sunday afternoon. This is pre-email. So on a Sunday afternoon, one of my counterparts at a company in California called me on a Sunday. And I had my phone number. It was printed because I had security clearance. And if there was ever an emergency issue on one of the planes, people had to know how to contact me. So my telephone number back then was listed in the emergency contacts list. So she called me at home, and she had a concern about something coming up with a negotiation the next week. And she had a challenge with her boss or something like that. And I was, emotionally, I was not in a good space back in my early 20s, still carrying all of the nonsense from childhood. And I helped her on the phone that day. And then the next day I went into work, and I was close with my boss. And I told him what happened. The reason I told him what happened was because I was of the mindset that my Saturday and Sunday are sacred. And since it wasn't an emergency, I felt like at that moment that she had shattered my sacred privacy. And I was a little annoyed that she took my weekend. This is how dramatic I was back then, that she took my weekend away from me. And later on in the week, I got just a typical business phone call from her because we were always working on something. And I could tell from her tone that something was really wrong. She was not friendly. She was not personable. It was all work, no play. So I later went in and was talking to my boss, and it turned out that he had called her boss to tell what I had shared. And she got reprimanded. And I was devastated because I was only talking about something that was personal to me, that I didn't like having my Sunday taken away. I never expected him to call her boss and tell him. So even though I had this terrible thing, I didn't have the strength or the courage to go to her and apologize or explain. I was emotionally immature at that time, so I couldn't do anything about it. But years later, as I started to step into my sense of self and I started to develop a relationship with enlightenment, I have to this day wanted to find her and go back and apologize to her. So maybe she never thought about it again after that moment. You know, I can't even imagine what age she is now. She had such a common name. I knew that in the sea of people, I would actually never be able to find her, which is the only reason I didn't go to try to find her. But the point is, I was the catalyst for a divide between us. The divide was relatively insignificant in my life and hopefully relatively insignificant in her life, but it planted a seed that burst into self-discovery decades later. And I know that I'm not trying to tell you that you got to give it decades and hopefully this will all resolve itself. The point is that even if someone is not acting on a change that comes from an emotional reaction, that there's something stirring inside, and at the right moment when they get settled or they have that shift or the white turns to black or this turns to that, at that moment they may be able to put that protection layer down or that stubbornness down and step forth and say, I'm ready to have a conversation about this. So I know it's difficult in any given moment not to have somebody important in your life when you have enjoyed and appreciated them in the past. But it is okay to let someone have the experiences that they are having without judgment, and then try your best to let go of whatever you see as a negative consequence to you. Give them the liberty of the experience that they're having so that the seed that has been planted can open and burst and potentially thrive. Okay? And interestingly, the woman who I'm talking about, her name was Anna. So if you happen to have gotten married and changed your name, Anna, and I did this to you, I apologize, okay? But you didn't work in the defense industry back in the 80s, right? Okay. So that's something that's difficult. It's difficult for us to let seeds grow in other people, knowing that that seed might not even develop in a way that we get to be a part of the harvest or the beauty or smelling the flowers. It's difficult to disconnect from what we consider to be important experiences in our life and sometimes let them have the journey that it is that they're having. There are so many opportunities that we're given in life where we get to have something that's a part of our life, but only temporarily, whether it's taking care of a goldfish when we're little kids and realizing that they're certainly not going to outlive us, or it's having a friendship and your friend moves away when you're in the 4th grade, or it's raising children and sending them off to college, or it's growing up and then taking a job in another state and leaving your parents, or it's having someone that you love die. There are so many ways where something that's really close to the center of our heart that they seem to disappear. But in the journey of things, I know it sounds corny, but love actually never dies. So even in the absence of somebody communicating with us directly, we are still present to them from our higher self to their higher self. And in any given moment, you can connect with their higher self and give them a message and kind of leave that door open for future possibility. If you're leaving your vibrational door open, it kind of adds to the possibility that they might be able to enter into that space on their own accord again. I gave a long answer, but I think that's a situation that a lot of people have, a lost loved one or a friend or someone leaves them. What I'm finding remarkable, and I'm sure a lot of people are seeing this, is, I've been through a few presidential elections in my life, so I'm not new to this. And I am amazed at the depths of long-term relationships, how they have been broken up or divided just because of differences in political opinions. To date, I've seen marriages split up, business partnerships, two friends not speak to each other, neighbors not speak to each other, and so on. I've seen so many relationships that you would think would be really impervious to any difference in political opinion. You would think that they would, never be able to be harmed by something like that, that have actually divided. So we have to sometimes wonder, like, why is it that stuff outside of us and pressures and stressors outside of us are having such a pronounced effect on, I'm not saying anyone on this call, but having such a pronounced effect on one's judgment of one another out there. Anytime you see an exacerbation of something that might not be aligned with universal wisdom, when it grows and it expands to that level, it's swinging the pendulum so far as to be unable to sustain that level of energy, so that it can swing back and get to the place in the middle where it truly wants to be, which is that, we can have differences of opinion, we can have conversation, and we can have debate, and that's all okay, but we can love and connect with the person underneath all of that, and that's okay. Not that that's being modeled in the actual debating situation, but the idea is that we can dislike a person's idea and still have a minimum of civility toward the human holding the idea. But what would be even better is to have an interesting, healthy debate and still like a person that we're debating with. I'm sure with the recent death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, probably a lot of you have watched her documentary that came out. I think it was in 2017. There's 2 shows that are out, but I'm talking about the documentary, RBG, I think it's called. One of the things that I found so fascinating, I actually learned about it in Piece It Together on Piece It Together on Facebook, my Good News channel. So I learned about it on Piece It Together, which is why I even went and watched the video. But it was a story about how different Ruth was from Anthony Scalia, and how they were usually on opposite sides of every decision. He had a boisterous, loud, in-your-face personality. She was incredibly introverted and shy and really didn't speak, never wanted attention, never wanted to be the life of the party. And they had this like inseparable friendship. And they didn't allow anything that was going on, even the debate of the highest court in the United States, they didn't even let that kind of level of debate, which I think you kind of say that debate might be pretty serious, right? They didn't let that affect their friendship. And to me, that's a wonderful example of what we all can be, that we can have differences of opinion, but we can still like each other. And that's the goal. That's the goal of the virus. That's the goal of the fires. That's the goal of even before COVID, all of the shootings, all of the weather pattern changes environmentally. All of this is purposeful for us to have a Ruth and Anthony kind of friendship with everybody. You can like people and appreciate them, even if you have differences in opinions. Okay? Let me catch up here. I have just answered a bunch of private messages. Whether you knew what I was talking about or not, I was actually answering questions. That's a good question. How do we put love in a vaccine? Okay. It's exactly that. If you want love to be in a vaccine, you just take a moment and you put love in that vaccine. There's nothing superfluous about that. They have done so many triple blind studies that show that when, this one's my favorite. At some point, I'm going to have to ask somebody to find it for me, because I I always talk about it, but then after I'm done talking about it, I never think to look it up. But we have 2 petri dishes, okay, and these petri dishes have healthy cells and cancer cells in them. Okay, so in those petri dishes, we have triple blind studies. I know it was like a university in Philly, Boston, and Sweden. So triple blind studies. What they did was they had a bunch of people, and they taught them how they used the word prayer. It's not a word I'll use, and I'll tell you why. But right now, I'm going to use the word prayer. So what they did was they trained people what prayer meant for this experiment, and they showed people how to use the vibration of love and send it off their body to a target. And they actually trained people how to pray to give love to a circumstance. So I think I'm pretty sure they had 5,000 subjects who were trained in positive prayer, and they ignored one petri dish, and then they sent love to the second petri dish. Okay, in this petri dish where it was ignored, the cancer cells ate the healthy cells. In the petri dish where the 5,000 people prayed with love, having no freaking idea what they were praying for, they didn't know it was a petri dish. They were just told, we have a subject and it's here and we'll all pray at the same time. This one, the healthy cells ate the cancer cells. So it's fascinating how miraculous the vibration of thought is. If we can do this in Petri dish laboratory triple blind studies, we can certainly do it from us having a sense of love and inserting some of that loving vibrational energy into a vaccine in a laboratory. If we just keep recognizing that love is limitless, if we use that love to power up things for good, we're going to have so much more impact than we might even be able to wrap our heads around. I'm just reading everybody's comments. Recognize that we have much more in common than we have separating us. Yep. Begin working together, even in small ways. Generates energy and momentum of a group dynamic. That is so totally, totally, totally true. It really is. It's so totally true. How can we as a community create a solution for everyone getting back to living in a new and enlightened way? I know that in the last couple of years, I've kind of ramped up the way that I'm communicating with people and offering things. So I thought I'd have done it a little bit more in 2020 as well, but it's okay because I'm simmering ideas and talking to guides all the time. And when we are more fully physically connected again, I personally will make a lot more opportunities for us as a high vibrational energy collection of people to work together in ways that could be fun and uplifting for ourselves and others. Okay. So we've got a lot of ideas brewing, and a bunch of them are, you can't see, but they're all taped on the sides of my computer just so you know that they're real. But we have these ideas of what we're going to be doing when we're allowed to be together physically. The good news is that all of the ideas and the way I communicated them with guides before COVID, they were always based on us meeting somewhere physically. And I actually had a location picked out. It was October 3rd. It was going to be in Manhattan, and we were going to start there. Obviously, we couldn't do that. But the good news is that this year compelled me to learn how to be more connecting with people through Zoom, which was something that I had resisted prior to this year. So now as we're getting high vibrational energy people together, we'll have an advanced, expanded opportunity to reach people that are out of our geographical area. And like tonight, I know we have people online from, not online, but registered, maybe they're online, I don't really know, but from Florida, California, Philly, Colorado, Chicago, New Jersey, Connecticut, where else? I said Florida, right? Oh, North Carolina. So we have all of these people that are participating. And when we were meeting in the city on this second Monday of every month, none of those people would have been there or participated with us in any way because they couldn't get there from where they were living. So that's the good news too, is I feel like as we expand physically, we'll be able to do things in a physical space, but I'll now have a better idea of how to allow people that are not geographically connected, connect with us through the things that it is that we do. All you need is love. Thank you, Terry. Yes. I think I answered every question that is here. There's still a few more private ones. Oh, the other part about like this period in history and how will it end and when will it end? What I have recognized is that highly evolved people, one of the things that we live in is we live in a sense of calm and peace that is uncommon. And when you live in a sense of peace and calm, you have a tendency to be less active in promoting change, because if nothing is broken in your own life, because you do live in a state of being powered by joy, sometimes it's not as motivating to work outside of yourself externally to try to help other people have invitations toward being powered by joy, right? So another important thing to do is to make sure that you are mindful of using your positive energy to help guide people along when they're in self-created positions of suffering, and to show them a way to move away from that energy or that habit and suggest different possibilities for them. Oftentimes, those chances come to us more when you're modeling what it's like to be powered by joy. When you're powered by joy, other people notice and oftentimes get curious and want to be near you or want to ask you questions or start saying things like, I never told this to anyone, but, and then all of a sudden someone else comes along and they say, I never told this to anyone, but, and then someone else comes along and they say, I never told this to anyone, but. And when you're that person, then you recognize that you have a high level of awareness. And when someone's confiding in you something that they hadn't told anyone before, it's because they have a sense of peace and they have a sense of ease with you, that they recognize that you will hold their heart in their hands and that they're safe in sharing something that they were reluctant to share with anybody else. So when you find that moment, it's a great moment to embrace whatever it is that they are sharing and to kind of boot up some of the good ideas that you might have. You know, one of the things I have always done, or I try to, is when someone is sharing something with me that's difficult in their life, is it's not jumping into do this, do this, do this, do this, even if those are the things that made life work better for you in a similar circumstance. Because when you say do this, it comes across as a criticism of the way that they are doing it. So what I always do, it's a softer invitation, is I invite them in by saying what I did and how it worked for me. That way I've given a narrative of something that I actually did and why it worked, but there's no criticism of them by saying that they didn't do it. So it's more inviting to give a narrative of your successes than it is to push on them what you think they should do to make an improvement in their life. So again, having a higher level of awareness gives you a wider opportunity to share love. And if I look in the chat room again, all you need is love, right, Terry? So looking in that chat room again, all you need is love. We have a better possibility of sharing love. And that means to do so consistently and coming at people with that loving space. Even if you actually feel afraid for the decisions they're making because they matter to you, still come to them with love and talking about your own life instead of theirs. Because even if you're connected to the outcome for them, Any form of criticism will not help them. It will only hurt them. But inviting them into a way that you maneuvered around the situation, that could actually help them if they choose to come down that pathway at all. Okay? So I will give you a chance to put in one last question, and I'll start to wrap up. We didn't take a break, so I can end a few minutes early for us. And just be mindful that your takeaway from tonight okay? So tomorrow when you wake up and you look at your own personal website, the second you get a glimpse of you in the mirror and you see the brand of who you are, because you're going to be that person from the moment you live till the moment you die. You are only you, right? You might change your self-identification, but you're always going to be you. And I am powered by joy. You get to decide every day of your life, what joy means to you. And it can be anything. It could be watching a praying mantis out on the balcony. It could be watching the way a sun ray comes in and hits some crystal and creates a rainbow on the other side of the wall. It could be finding 6 kittens underneath your deck and domesticating them, and then they're jumping up on you while you're trying to do a Zoom class. It could be anything, as long as it's what you find joy in, and it's joy for you. When you live in that sense of being powered by joy, everything in life just gets magnificently brighter, freer, more creative, more spontaneous, and more happy. All right? So thank you, everybody. It was really great to see you. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your questions. And for all of those who will be viewing later in the week, don't forget to email your questions even when you can't be online, so I can still address them and you'll see them the next day. Good night, everybody.